once a week to answer any questions you might have. And as a reminder, when you have questions, type them in at applications@melco.com or send them over as comments on the feed, and we will get them answered. So let's see if I can find the video to make sure I can see your questions. Ah, there it is, live. Click on the video. Questions, type them in at applications@melco. There. All right. Looks like I'm live. All right, so I'll go ahead and jump in on the questions I have for now. And feel free again to type them in. Hopefully I'll see them this week to get them answered for you. All right, so we'll start off with, when doing large lettering, I used a fill stitch, and it did serifs one way, half the other way, caused a pinch of the fabric to show through the serif. How do you fix this so it won't happen? Good morning. Someone typed in a question already. Let's see what it is. I'm trying my first digitizing of a large design. When I click on an element in the project view. All right, I'll come back to that. Let me answer the one I just started, and then I'll read that. Okay, so let's go over to DesignShop. And I don't want that. I want a plain one. File, open. We're going to go to, I guess I should have opened it beforehand. All right, almost there. I guess I didn't save it. All right, forget it. So, new letter athletic block. I'm going to change it to that. And I'm going to type Sam. I'm going to change it to 2 inches. All right, so what they're saying is, in these areas where the serifs overlap, you're seeing gaps in there. So a few things that you want to pay attention to is, first off, make sure you have your properties set up, that you're using good underlays appropriate for it. So continuous underlay is always a good idea because it will do the underlay first before it does the top stitching. So that'll help prevent the fabric from moving around, which is some of that gapping you'll see. Good morning. Oh, from Alaska. That's cold. Here it's never cold. I'm in Florida. It's like 90 something, 100 most days. All right, so make sure you're using continuous underlay. Turn on auto underlays. If you don't know what underlay you like, if you know what underlay you like, you can always use maybe a fill and an edge walk. You know, it is a personal preference on what you like. So I'm going to go with a fill and an edge walk. And a border margin of 7 to 10 is usually safe. The bigger the letter, you probably want a little bit more. So I'm going to leave it like that. Now, a few other things that you can adjust are the pull compensation. So with this pull offset, I'm going to way overdo it so that you can watch this overlap here. See, now I've got so much more overlap between the one letter and the block. See that right there? Okay, so that is what the pull offset's doing. So that'll help prevent that gapping that you see. Another technique you can use is, again, let's say you've done a decent underlay, you've added some pull offset, and you still want a little bit better. Well, what you can do is kind of a primer stitch ahead of time before you actually sew each letter, but you would want to do primer letter, so on and so forth, so that you're not doing all the primer stitches and then all the lettering, because then you might have registration issues. So to do the primer, there's a few different ways to do it. I'm gonna put that back down to something more reasonable with my pull offset. Okay, so I'm gonna duplicate this. I'm going to operations, convert to vector. And then I'm going to take my S and I'm going to go object offset outline and do, let's say, -10. Okay, so what that did is, notice my border is now parallel all the way around the edge, but it's in 10 points all the way around. So from here, I can turn that into a fill stitch. So if I turn off my lettering just so you can see it, I can take this, add a stitch direction, for instance, and now it's a fill. Well, let's say I don't want that. I want that to be more like a primer stitch. So what would I do? I'd go into the properties and turn off this auto, make that something bigger. So let's say 30 with trapunto, trace border, I'm going to make that 90. Yeah. And then instead of auto, I'll again make the border margin, this time 0 because I already did a border margin. 30, there. So now I've got a little crosshatch pattern under there that will act as a primer stitch to hold everything down before it sews my letter. So as long as I put those in the right order, it'll sew that primer stitch and then my letter S. But I really would want to do primer S, A, the primer for A, then the A, so on and so forth. Okay. All right. So let's see, what else do we have? So that's how I would avoid that. Use pull compensation. Make sure you're using good underlay techniques. You're not using a center walk, for instance. And then all else fails, do a manual primer under there. In DesignShop, using the circle tool, it won't let me scroll up and down when I zoom. Can I turn it off so I can, basically create a circle outside the bounds? No, there's no way to do that. Okay, so what that's asking is, if I want to draw a circle, so I use my fill, my circle tool, and I want to click off the screen over here somewhere. There's no scrolling. So you have to click on what you see, and if I hold the shift key, I can make it extend past it that way, but that's about as much as you can do with that circle tool. There is no zooming once you click in the command. Where can I get hands-on training? There's a lot of resources available to you. There's always, the best suggestion I always tell people is to start at Melco University, go to the media tab, and watch all the digitizing videos. Start at the top and work your way to the bottom. That'll really get you through the basics, if you will. And then there's always private training that you can do. It's on Shop Melco, I believe, where you can set up a 4-hour block and schedule private training with various trainers, and they'll get in touch with you to see what your goals are and work through different training options, going through. Now, if you're talking about hands-on training for your machine, again, you can contact your sales agent, and they will there is a 2-day training for your machine, and your trainer will come out and they work with you hands-on from everything from threading your machine, troubleshooting it, hooping, hats, flats, anything you want to know. And if you have specific things you want to cover, make sure you have that available, so when your trainer's there, they can work through it for you. Okay. Yeah, so there's that. That's the basic things. Now, if you have more specific things that you want to see either taught through these lives, you can always send it to the application team, or if you want one-on-one, you can always contact, again, your sales agent or email the applications team, and we can point you in whatever direction would be best suited for your needs. All right. Another question we had is there a way I can do something like this Grand Champion easier, or do I really need to create one word with one arch, then another word with another arch, and kind of wiggle them around until I figure it out? Well, yes, there's an easier way to do that than doing them as separate elements. So I did one. I didn't know what font that was and didn't feel like trying to figure it out. So I just grabbed this one that I had. So to create that, you're using a feature within the lettering under this line type right here called custom. Okay, so how you would do it is, I'm going to create some lettering. I'm going to type out Grand Champion, or champions, plural, whatever. What font was that? That was Kiss. Yeah. And I'm going to make it smaller. Let's say 0.6. Close enough. All right. So once you have the font, typed out the words, now we want to do that curve. So to do that, I'm going to go to Properties. I'm going to change the line type to Custom, and I'm going to hit Apply. What you'll see when you do that is now I have a blue line with 2 triangles underneath there. So that line is kind of like a baseline that you can move around now, add points to it. So if I add a right click, I can drag that down. Okay, and then I've got these Bezier handles that I can move around to adjust it. Same with over here. I can add a point and again adjust it. Okay, so once you have the general shape, whatever you're looking for, then you can adjust the kerning as needed. for your specific font. So let's say, you know, it piled all these, but notice as I'm moving them around, it's keeping them locked to that baseline, so it's following the curve. Okay, so you can play with it, but that's the easiest way. You can make it do whatever shape you want. You just kind of adjust your handles around and move them, and it will reposition all your lettering following that. Okay, so that would be the easiest way. Oh yeah, Natalie did point out for training hands-on, if you can always go to the training map and find a trainer and contact them and see what offerings they can offer you. So if you had to see who's close to you. So another question was typed in. I'm trying my first digitizing of a large design. In DesignShop, when I click on an element on the project view, I cannot select but one sub-element. It selects the entire thing. If I want to change the color, I cannot. Okay, so Frankie, it would be helpful if you could send me an example, because depending on what type of element, I would tell you different things. So if you have a file that you're, you know, an example of what you're trying to change, that would be helpful. But let me just see if I can try to. So I'm going to go open up. Let's go find a design. I'm going to go to my C drive, designs. You guys all have these. I'm going to open up the OFM version. Okay. So depending on the type of element. So I think what you're saying is over here, when I click on things, it's selecting multiple items at a time. So the first question I'd have for you is, are they showing up like this, where it's a complex fill, a walk normal, things like that? Or are they showing up as expandeds? So I'm going to open another, oops, I don't want that. I want that. Good grief. That one. Okay. Or when I are they showing up like that, where it says expanded? So you'll notice all of these are selecting as one element because it's an expanded item. Okay, so depending on how they're selected, you know, how they're created, you're going to do different things. So over here, if all of this is selecting together, it might be that they're grouped together. All right, so that way whenever you click on one element, notice they select as a group and you can't deal with them one at a time. So to undo that, up here in this menu, there's this ungroup button. So there's the group, there's the ungroup. If I hit ungroup, they'll deselect. So, you know, group is in general pretty handy for when you're trying to keep things together. So let's say you have a shape and an outline, something like that. That would be handy for you to keep the outline always moving together with the shape. All right, so that would be one. You also said you're having issues with the stitch direction. So one part you're wanting to modify. So again, if there is only one stitch direction on there, right, there's only one for you to modify, right? So let's say what I really wanted was, let's pick one of these leaves. So I'm going to click on that leaf. So these were done as complex or column 1, so I'd need a column 2. Which there aren't any. Okay, so I'm going to draw one as a column 2 just to have something to point at. So let's say, oh, that's fancy. All right, so let's say I had that and I really wanted to add additional stitch directions and change them. Well, in that case, you would just keep adding stitch direction lines to adjust the different areas and move them around. Okay, now if these are expanded, you can't do that sort of thing. So you'll notice over here in the expanded, there's no stitch directions. An expanded file, okay, so the ungroup icon worked for you, fantastic. Just to finish my thought while I was going there, expanded files, they're just needle penetrations. There is no wireframe, there's no stitch direction, there's no math behind it. It literally is, you know, put a needle penetration here, come over here this far, put another one, go back and forth. Okay, so ungroup answered that. Fantastic. Let's see, what else do we have? We covered that one, and I did all those, so let's see what else. What did I do to make my hoop selection in DS not work? OS is okay. Honestly, I have no idea. Let me show you a few thoughts I had of what might be going on, and if not, I'll give you another suggestion. So can you delete stitch directions? Yes, we'll do that next. All right, so first off, to get to your hoops to show up in DS, you click on this button. If you right click on it, if you accidentally select choose a different manufacturer, sometimes that'll make it look like your hoops are all missing. Okay, so that might be one thing. Make sure you have the correct manufacturer, correct machine, and you didn't accidentally get these flopped off onto something else. Okay, so that would be one. But if for some reason, you can get to your hoop manager and it's just not changing stuff for you, what I would suggest is, I've never been able to make it not do what I want, so I can't duplicate the problem for you. What I'd suggest is call tech support and let them log into your computer so that they can go through the settings and see what's going on for you. But the only thing I could think of is if maybe you ended up toggling the manufacturer to something else, and that way it's not showing up correctly. Okay. Can I delete stitch directions? That was typed in. So let's go back to this thing that I drew. That's ugly, but that's okay. All right, so I added a bunch of stitch directions on there. So I did this one, that one, that one, and this weird one up here. If you want to delete them, anytime you're going to modify a shape, the first thing you do is select what you want to modify. So I'm selecting that shape. Then over here, I'd click on the stitch direction tool. Now that makes them where they're selectable. So from there, I click on one point, one end of the line, and hit the delete key. And they go away. See that? So I can delete them if you added too many or you just don't like them. When you delete them all, it depends on the element. It might make the stitches go away altogether. Like in the case of a complex, if you delete every stitch direction, it goes to a vector and it won't have any stitches to it until you apply a stitch direction line. If it's a column 1 like I have here, pointing at my screen's not helpful, I'm sorry. But if it's a column 2 element here, if you delete them all, it's just going to approximate stitches across, which is what you saw when I deleted them all. Okay. All right. What else? Under Accelerate Editor, if one of the commands is locked, is there a way to unlock it? No. Okay, I was just reading another question that was typed in. Is there a way to unlock it? No, there's not. So if it's grayed out in the Accelerator Editor, it is hard-coded and you can't change it. So that is one that whatever hotkey is assigned to it, there's nothing you can do about it. All right. So there's a question how to delete a hole, and then there's also here if you want to change part of a color, can you split something up to do that? So let's do those both in one example. All right. So I'm going to go open something to trace because I seem to embarrass myself when I try to draw freehand. Here, fills BMP. I'm going to trace the heart. All right, so we're going to do a complex fill. I'm going to trace the heart. So I clicked on the complex fill icon, and now I'm just using my right clicks on my mouse. Right clicks give me those curved points, left clicks give me straight points. The straight points are the triangles, the dots are the curved points. So once you trace all the way around, you hit enter, that closes the shape. Now it's asking if you want to add a hole. So let's say I want to add, I'm just going to add something because we want to delete it anyway. So add a hole. If you want to add more, you can. Make it there. Okay, I have a Frankenstein pumpkin here. All right, so I added holes. I'm done adding holes, so I'm going to hit enter. You give it a start, a stop, and a stitch direction. All right, so now we have a fill. So if we want to get rid of those holes, what do we do? Well, again, anytime you're going to edit something, the very first thing you have to do is select the shape you want to modify. All right, so I selected the shape. Now, if I click inside one of those holes, now notice it's selecting that entire shape. So now I can just hit the delete key. So again, all I have to do is click inside the hole, and you notice it now highlights a hole. You can scale it, you can move it, you can rotate it, or you can just hit the delete key. Okay, so move it around, scale it, add points to it. You know, you can modify it as its own little wireframe all you want, or select and delete. Okay, so that was one. But now let's say we want to take this heart and we want to break it in half to make it a broken heart with half of it red, half of it a different color, or pink and red, whatever you want. All right, so different ways we can split it. I can go and, again, I'm modifying a shape, so I select it first. Now, this thing here is Insert Splice. So I'm going to left click and drag across, and that's a straight line. So now if I want to split it, I select the shape, click the first point of that split line, hold the Control key on my keyboard, and select the other. Now notice they're both black. So now I can come over here, hold this icon down, and then I can go here to split icon, or to split element at selected points. And now you'll see, ooh, that's not a good color. Let's do that one. All right. So now, I don't like that. All right, I'm playing with color. Sorry, I should stop that. Let's do black and white. Okay. All right, so that split it in half. All right. Now, if you, let's say instead of a straight segment, we wanted to then turn that into a broken heart. So how will we do that? Well, again, I just hit undo a bunch of times to get it back to my original heart. So rather than using this first one, which is insert a straight splice, right here I can say insert curve splice. Okay. So from here, now I can left click, and I can draw myself a broken heart. Let's go here. Enter. You can do curve points too. I just did straight points. All right. So from there, now if I want to split it, I would then go to select the shape, select one point, hold my Control key, select the other, and then right here, split element at selected point, and again, I've got my broken heart. So then you can, let's say we want to move, let's say you want to rotate it. There's a rotation point. Well, maybe you want to rotate it from the bottom down here. I can move that. So then twist it out so it's rotating about that bottom point. So, you know, there's a lot of things you can play with. Okay. There's a lot. The split, I love a lot. So that's splitting complex tools. Now, what was the actual question? Oh, I've distracted myself here. Oh, so if that same thing works, let's say you have a running stitch that you want to change into multiple colors, or a single line center that you want to change into multiple colors. The split tool works similar. So let's say I have a single line center, which is just a constant width column. I draw it. There we go. I've got a 40 point line now. And let's say I want to split it right here and make that first point, this first part red, that second part black. Well, I'd select the point I want to split it at, click on split point, and then just give it another color. Okay? And that same technique works with your walks, any of your columns, things like that. Okay. No other questions typed in so far, so I'm going to go back to my list. How do you use the crosshatch, and where do we find it? All right. So, oops, get back here. File, open, webinar. There. All right. So to use the cross stitch tool, if you've never seen it, is this one right here. Select cross stitch input method. Okay. Will that work with someone asked, will that work with borders too? So I assume you're wondering about the splitting of an edge. Yes, it will. So before we jump over here, let me quick do that. So let's say I've got no, I'm going to draw a circle. It's easier. So circle. So I've got a border of that's a circle. And I want to split it. I can add a point, split. When you split a circle, it sometimes moves that one point. You just put it back. So I've got one point split. Well, I can come over here and split there, and split here, there. So I can make that one red or black, whatever you want to do. When it's on a curve, it'll move it, so you have to put it back. But straight lines, it just splits it straight. So yes, it'll work with borders too. All right, so back to our crosshatch. Or cross stitching. So the cross stitch feature is here. There's a bunch of different ways you can use it. So you can of course click on the cross stitch, draw a box, and then paint by number essentially. Up here If you need to erase, you change the color to no color erase. You can put 25 different colors, so select color 1, give it a color, and you can draw whatever you want. It'll put your boxes in there. You can change the type of cross that it's doing. The stars are always fun. I'll zoom in so you can actually see what these are doing. So you've got the star there. Let's say I want a different color. Oops, let's go to color 2 and not 4. Again, I can color in, choose the different things. If you want to do the larger, more, halves, things like that. So you can do different types of stitches through here. And let's say, so that's doing it square by square. Everywhere you click, it's going to fill it in with whatever type. But if you want to use, you can draw lines. So if you draw a shape, it will then kind of approximate across there. Everywhere it crosses the grid, it will draw it. It'll fill it in with the different boxes. You also have fills, where again you draw a shape and it will fill in that area with whatever pattern you selected. Now if you want to erase the mess that I just made, you can again erase one at a time. Clicky one at a time here. You can erase by box, so I can circle it and it'll erase everything. Okay, so that's one way you can use it. Is I always look at that as paint by number. I'm filling in my cross stitch design as I go. All right, so another way is to work with the graphics. So let's say you've got this picture that you want to turn into a cross stitch pattern. Well, select your graphic, right click, go to cross stitch. Okay, from here, this is how big, 20 points, remember that's 2 millimeters. That's how big you want those little squares for your X's to be. Okay, this is how many colors you want. So I'm going to use 8 and I'm going to change that to high. Let's do 7. All right, I'm going to change it to high and say okay. It processes it for you and I've got a design. It didn't put that white in there. If I wanted, I can go add it. If I'm doing it on a white fabric, then I wouldn't necessarily need it. Okay, so if you want to modify it, again, you can go erase cells by clicking here. You can go, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colors. So I can come down to color 7, give it white, and let's go to a regular cross right there. I'm going to zoom in and, oh, let me change it from the fill thing to just, and I can go fill all this in. See that? So I can go color it in when I'm all done. So I'm painting by number here rather than using the lines, but you get the idea. Okay, so it's a fun little tool. Once you're done with it, so let's say those are all the modifications I'm going to make, then I click off of it, it'll reprocess it all, and there you go. Now, different things that you can always play with if you go into the properties. The thickness is how many times it's going to go over every stitch. It's similar to what you see on bean stitch, right? So a bean stitch is how many passes of thread it's going to go over everything. So if you want it to do more than that, you can change it. Okay. Yeah, the overlap, I believe that's overlap between cells. I just leave that alone. So there you go. So that's a cross stitch. Let's see. Yeah, what other questions do we have? I buy a design and want to fix some of the jump stitches that are there. How do I fix it? So depends on how the jump stitches are in there. So if I go, so let me go open up, go back to my expanded file, that one. All right, this one doesn't have jump stitches, but I can show you the technique. So let's just pretend, well, here. So let's say I want to split this and delete these extraneous points. Right now they actually combine into and get rid of a jump stitch, but if they didn't, if it's expanded, I would come over here, click on the expanded editing mode, click on the point and hit delete. Okay, so you can delete stitches that way, or once you're there, so let's say this was a jump stitch and I wanted to insert a trim, I could select the point, again using that expanded point editing, click on insert trim, I have a trim there now. So now I can go delete stitches and just delete it and insert an actual trim between those, and it will go away. Helps if I put the trim in the right spot though. There you go. So now see that jump stitch that was there is now gone because it was between there and here. So you see now it's there. There's the jump. Now it's gone. Okay. Let's see, what other questions do we have? How do we add other fonts to DesignShop and what formats are supported? So with fonts, you can use any TrueType font or anything with TrueType outlines. You can use those. So those are Windows fonts. You install them into Windows. When you close DesignShop and reopen them, they then appear in the software. Okay, so they're not pre-digitized. They're just fonts that... So these are all ones that were digitized under this TrueType category. These are ones that are either came with my computer or that I installed at some point. Okay, so these are all different fonts that you can choose from and work with. Okay, so you can use TrueType fonts. You can use OFA fonts. So if someone actually goes through and digitizes in the alphabet editor here, one letter at a time, that saves it off as an OFA, and you would just put the OFA folder into the font folder within DesignShop, and then you would have those. The BX files, those are not directly usable within DesignShop. You would have to use the software they come from. There's a free version. You can open it up, type out, in their software, the BX, whatever text you want. And then you would do a file save as a DST or an EXP or whatever format makes you happy. And then from there, you can then bring it into DesignShop. So it will save out the actual Word with the kerning, everything on there. So then you can open it in DesignShop, add it to whatever else you're working on. Okay. Yeah. So that's using fonts. Using BX is no, not directly, but really if you're looking for fonts, you would want to find someone who's doing OFA fonts. Okay, because those are directly keyboard typable. Okay, those were all the questions I had typed in. I'm looking through comments. I don't see any others typed in so far, so I'll give it a minute or two, see if anyone else has any to add. And if not, I will call it a day and talk to you guys next week. Next week I'll be here on Thursday. So we're switching Thursday, Friday, Thursday, Friday. I have a conflict every other week at the moment. So hopefully that works for everyone. Any other questions that I can help answer for you this week? No? Okay. Well, you guys have a fantastic weekend. Hopefully find something fun to do. Stay safe, and I will talk to you guys next week. Next Thursday, same time, and see what trouble we can get into. All right. You guys have a fantastic weekend. Bye.